First contact gone wrong. Captain Mara Vex stood at the viewport of the celestial envoy, her four-fingered hand pressed against the transparent alloy as Earth came into view, a swirling blue and white marble suspended in the void. After 20 cycles of space exploration, first contact missions had become routine for her. This one should have been no different. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said First Officer Taz, his translucent skin shimmering under the ship's ambient lighting. Hard to believe such a primitive species evolved on such a jewel. Vex's silver eyes narrowed. "Never judge a species by their homeworld, Taz. I've seen paradise planets produce monsters and harsh wastelands birth philosophers. Still, the Alliance intelligence briefings painted humanity as a curiosity at best. A young species barely a century into their space age, still fighting among themselves over resources, ideology, and territory. Their technology was crude, their weapons primitive, their spacecraft limited to their own system. Perfect candidates for Alliance guidance. The humans have accepted our communication request," announced Communications Officer Laurel, her tentacles dancing across the console. "They're requesting a formal meeting with their United Earth Council in 3 rotations. 3 rotations? Taz scoffed. "That's excessive. Most species are eager for first contact." Vex turned from the viewport, her ceremonial captain's cloak swirling around her tall, slender frame. "They're being cautious. It's their right. Prepare the diplomatic team and notify Alliance Command of the delay." She retired to her quarters, activating the holographic display of human history compiled by Alliance stenoanthropologists. The data was surprisingly sparse, a collection of intercepted broadcasts, long-range observations, and speculative analyses. Humans had been placed in Category 3, pre-galactic civilizations of limited immediate potential. Vex scrolled through footage of human conflicts, their so-called world wars, regional disputes, terrorism. Violence was clearly part of their nature, but the Alliance had integrated far more aggressive species successfully. "Computer, display humanity's current military capabilities." The hologram shifted to show primitive nuclear arsenals, projectile weapons, rudimentary energy shields, and spacecraft equipped with basic thrusters. Nothing that could challenge even a single Alliance corvette, let alone the Celestial Envoy. A diplomatic vessel, but still equipped with defensive systems that could level a human city if necessary. 3 days later, the diplomatic team was assembled in the shuttle bay. 12 representatives from the Alliance's principal species, dressed in formal attire, armed only with translators and cultural databases. Protocol dictated minimal security for diplomatic missions, particularly for Category 3 civilizations. "Remember," Vex addressed the team, "humans may be primitive by our standards, but they deserve the same respect we'd offer any species. Our goal is peaceful integration into the Alliance, not subjugation." First Officer Taz nodded, though Vex caught his slight expression of disdain. Like many Alliance officers, he considered these missions beneath him, glorified recruitment drives disguised as diplomacy. The Alliance always got what it wanted eventually. The shuttle detached from the Celestial Envoy, descending through Earth's atmosphere toward the designated landing zone, a large courtyard adjacent to a gleaming building in a city called Geneva. Vex noted the minimal military presence visible from the air. Either humans were supremely confident or woefully unprepared. As they touched down, Vex felt a flutter of unease. Something wasn't right. The courtyard was empty except for a small reception committee. 5 humans in formal attire waiting at the base of a short staircase. "Where are the crowds?" whispered cultural specialist Mira. "Most species treat first contact as a momentous occasion." "Perhaps they're being discreet," Vex replied, though her instincts were screaming. She activated her neural implant, establishing a direct link to the Celestial Envoy. "Maintain alert status. Something feels off." The shuttle doors opened, and the diplomatic team emerged into Earth's sunlight. The gravity was slightly stronger than Alliance standard, the air richer in oxygen. The 5 humans approached, their expressions carefully neutral. "Welcome to Earth," said the central figure, a tall male with dark skin and close-cropped white hair. "I am Director Hammond of the United Earth Council. We appreciate your acceptance of our meeting terms." Vex stepped forward, performing the Alliance greeting gesture, arms wide, palms forward, head slightly bowed. "I am Captain Nera Vex of the Galactic Alliance. We come in peace and friendship, offering membership in our coalition of worlds." Hammond's expression didn't change. "We're familiar with the concept of coalitions, Captain. Please, follow me." "The Council awaits." The diplomatic team followed the humans into the building, through security scanners that Vex noted were far more sophisticated than intelligence had suggested. The corridors were strangely empty, the expected bureaucratic bustle of a governmental center absent. They were led into a circular chamber with a domed ceiling. Around a crescent-shaped table sat 15 humans of various ethnicities, all wearing the same severe expressions. Behind them, instead of the expected decorative elements or flags, were large display screens showing what appeared to be military installations. Vex felt her scales tighten against her skin, a physiological response to danger her species had evolved millennia ago. "Captain Vex," said Hammond, taking his place at the center of the table. "Before we proceed with diplomatic niceties, the Council has authorized me to show you something." The screens behind them flickered, showing new images. Alliance vessels in orbit around various planets, surveillance footage of Alliance military operations, detailed schematics of Alliance technology. "You've been watching us," Vex said, her voice steady despite her shock. "For over 50 years, Hammond confirmed. Ever since your scout ships first entered our system, thinking themselves undetected." Vex's mind raced. Alliance records showed first observation of Earth just 15 years ago. There had been no scout missions before that. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," she began, but Hammond cut her off. "No misunderstanding, Captain. We intercepted your transmissions. We've learned your language. We've studied your technology. And most importantly, we've observed how the Alliance treats primitive species once they're incorporated." The screens changed again, showing footage Vex recognized with horror. The suppression of the Krith uprising, the resource stripping of Pivonis IV, the cultural reeducation of the Zenari. These were classified operations, their details known only to high-level Alliance personnel. "How did you?" "You're not the first Alliance vessel to visit Earth, Captain," said a female council member. "Just the first invited one." Hammond's expression hardened. 3 years ago, an Alliance scout ship crashed in our Pacific Ocean. We recovered it before it sank. The crew was dead, but their databases were intact. Vex's blood ran cold. The Pathfinder mission, reported lost to a spatial anomaly. The Alliance had searched for months before declaring it destroyed with all hands. "We learned much from that ship," Hammond continued, "including the Alliance's true intentions for Earth. Category 3 civilization recommended for immediate resource extraction upon integration. Our oceans, our forests, our minerals, all cataloged for efficient harvesting. Our population designated for labor reassignment to Alliance Central Worlds." "That's not." Vex tried to protest, but she knew it was true. Standard procedure for resource-rich, technologically inferior worlds. "We also learned something else," Hammond said, his voice dropping lower. "The Alliance considers humans psychologically malleable due to our short lifespans and emotional nature. Easy to control, easy to exploit." He leaned forward. "You were gravely mistaken." A high-pitched tone suddenly emanated from the walls. Vex's translator couldn't identify it, but she watched in horror as her diplomatic team collapsed to the floor, writhing in agony. Some kind of sonic weapon calibrated to Alliance physiologies. Vex herself remained standing only because of her captain's neural implant, which automatically adjusted to compensate for the attack. She reached for her emergency beacon, but before she could activate it, a human security team burst into the room, wielding weapons that looked nothing like the primitive firearms in the intelligence reports. "Captain Vex will remain unharmed," Hammond commanded as the humans secured the incapacitated diplomatic team. "She's going to deliver our message." "This is an act of war," Vex managed, fighting against the disorienting effects of the sonic weapon. Hammond actually smiled then, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "No, Captain. This is self-defense. Your alliance came to our world under false pretenses, with documented intentions to strip our resources and enslave our people. Under both human and galactic law, our response is fully justified." He nodded to one of the security team, who approached Vex with what appeared to be a data crystal. "This contains evidence of your alliance's true intentions, gathered from your own classified records. It also contains our terms." "Terms?" Vex echoed, struggling to maintain consciousness as the sonic weapon continued its assault on her nervous system. "Simple ones," Hammond replied. "The Alliance will acknowledge Earth's sovereignty and independence. You will establish a 20-light-year exclusion zone around our solar system. You will provide reparations for the worlds you've already destroyed or enslaved. In return, we won't share what we know about the Alliance with every other species in the galaxy." Vex stared at him in disbelief. "You're in no position to make demands. The Alliance has thousands of warships, millions of soldiers, and a very vulnerable infrastructure," interrupted another council member. "Particularly your automated defense networks, which all run on the same quantum protocols we extracted from the Pathfinder." Vex felt true fear for the first time in her career. "You're bluffing. Your technology can't possibly." "We've already penetrated your networks, Captain," Hammond said calmly. "Right now, we're holding back a virus that could disable every Alliance defense system simultaneously. Consider it our insurance policy." He stood, straightening his formal jacket. "You have 48 hours to deliver our terms to your superiors. Your diplomatic team will remain here as our guests until we receive a favorable response." Vex fought to remain upright as the guards approached her. "You don't understand what you're doing. The Alliance won't negotiate with primitives." Hammond finished for her. "That's precisely your mistake, Captain. You see, humanity hasn't spent its history fighting because we're primitive. We've been preparing." As Vex was escorted from the chamber, Hammond called after her. "One more thing, Captain. Tell your superiors to look up Earth's evolutionary history. We're not herbivores who developed intelligence as a survival trait. We're apex predators who got bored with hunting." Back aboard her shuttle, alone and shaken, Vex frantically transmitted everything to the celestial envoy. The Alliance would never accept human demands. They would respond with overwhelming force, a punishment fleet to make an example of Earth. But as her shuttle climbed through Earth's atmosphere, her sensors detected something that hadn't been there before: hundreds of small objects in high orbit, previously camouflaged against Earth's radiation signature. Orbital defense platforms, far more advanced than anything humans should possess. Her shuttle's communication system suddenly activated without her input. "Safe journey, Captain Vex," came Hammond's voice. "We'll be watching for the Alliance's response. Do try to be persuasive. It would be a shame if this ended in unnecessary bloodshed." The transmission ended, leaving Vex staring at the approaching celestial envoy with a sense of dread. She knew what would happen next. The Alliance would send its fleets. They would expect an easy victory against a primitive world, and she was increasingly certain they would be wrong. As her shuttle docked, she received a final transmission. A simple text message this time. "We did warn you not to come here." Vex closed her eyes, suddenly understanding. Earth hadn't been hiding from the galaxy. They had been lying in wait. The wolves awaken. Admiral Krovash of the Galactic Alliance punitive fleet stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Indomitable, his 6 eyes fixed on the holographic display of Earth. 300 warships under his command formed a sphere around the planet, the largest deployment since the Morkathi Rebellion. Overkill for a Category 3 civilization, perhaps, but after the humiliation of the diplomatic mission, the Alliance Senate had authorized decisive action. "Status report," he demanded, his voice echoing across the silent bridge. "All ships in position, "Admiral," replied his executive officer. "Planetary defense grid identified and targeted. We've detected approximately 500 orbital platforms and a small fleet of defensive vessels. Primitive technology, minimal threat." Krovash grunted. Captain Vex had tried to warn them otherwise, insisting that human technology was far more advanced than intelligence suggested. The Senate had dismissed her concerns as the ramblings of a traumatized officer and relieved her of command. Now she sat in the brig of the Indomitable, awaiting court-martial for the loss of her diplomatic team. "Open communications to all Earth frequencies," Krovash ordered. "Let's give them one chance to surrender." The comms officer complied, and Krovash straightened his massive frame, adopting the imperious tone expected of an Alliance admiral. "People of Earth, I am Admiral Krovash of the Galactic Alliance Punitive Fleet. Your unprovoked attack on our diplomatic mission constitutes an act of war. Surrender immediately, release our personnel, and submit to Alliance authority, or face immediate planetary bombardment." He expected panic, perhaps hasty pleas for negotiation. Instead, after a brief pause, a single voice responded, calm, composed, and unmistakably human. "Admiral Krovash, I am Commander Ilara Chen of Earth United Defense. We've been expecting you." The holographic display shifted, showing the human female with sharp features and calculating eyes, dressed in a black uniform adorned with subtle insignia. "Your diplomatic team is unharmed and will remain so, provided your fleet maintains its current position. As for surrender," she smiled slightly, "I'm afraid that's not an option we're considering." Krovash felt a flicker of annoyance. "Commander Chen, perhaps you fail to grasp your situation. I command enough firepower to reduce your civilization to ash. Your orbital defenses are already targeted. You have no leverage." "That's where you're mistaken, Admiral," Chen replied. "While your ships have been assembling, we've been busy. I suggest you scan your fleet more carefully." Krovash nodded to his tactical officer, who immediately conducted a deep scan of the Alliance vessels. The officer's skin paled as the results appeared on his console. "Admiral, we're detecting unknown devices attached to the hulls of 78% of our ships, including the Indomitable. They appear to be explosive in nature." "Impossible," Krovash hissed. "Our shields have been active since we entered the system." "Phase-shifting mines," Chen explained, her expression unchanged. "We developed them after studying Alliance shield technology. Your barriers are impressive against conventional weapons, but they have certain frequency vulnerabilities." Krovash's mind raced. How could a primitive species have developed such sophisticated countermeasures? Even with data from a crashed scout ship, the technological leap was implausible. "You're bluffing," he decided. "If you had such technology, you wouldn't be confined to a single world. Or perhaps we simply chose to remain in our system," Chen countered. "A strategic decision, not a technological limitation." Before Krovash could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The tactical display showed dozens of small spacecraft emerging from Earth's atmosphere, craft that hadn't appeared on previous scans. "Stealth technology," muttered his executive officer. "Admiral, these vessels are accelerating toward our fleet formation." "Destroy them," Krovash ordered, his patience exhausted. "All ships, target approaching craft and fire at will." The Alliance fleet responded instantly, energy weapons lancing through space toward the human vessels. Most found their targets, vaporizing the small craft in brilliant explosions. But for every ship destroyed, 3 more seemed to appear, swarming like insects around the larger Alliance vessels. "Admiral," the tactical officer called, "the human ships are deploying some kind of boarding pods. They're attaching to our vessels." "Impossible," Krovash repeated, but the evidence was clear on the display. Small objects were latching onto Alliance ships, burning through their hulls despite their shields. "All vessels, deploy internal security teams," he commanded. "Repel boarders and maintain formation." But the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Reports flooded in from across the fleet. Alliance crews engaged in desperate combat with human boarding parties. The invaders were using weapons and tactics unlike anything in Alliance records, moving with a coordination and ruthlessness that defied their supposed primitive status. Admiral, his executive officer's voice was tight with tension. We've lost contact with 12 ships already. The humans are. They're capturing our vessels. Krovash slammed his fist on the command console. Impossible. No species has ever captured an Alliance warship intact. First time for everything, Admiral, came Chen's voice, still connected to their communication system. Your technology is impressive, but your tactics are predictable. You rely too heavily on your technological superiority, and not enough on adaptability. On the tactical display, Krovash watched in horror as one of his destroyers turned its weapons on an Alliance cruiser, tearing through its shields with precision strikes. The humans had not only captured the ship, but had mastered its weapon systems in minutes. Commander Chen, Krovash growled, abandoning diplomacy, whatever primitive tricks you've employed, they won't save you. The Alliance will send more ships, more soldiers. You cannot hope to prevail. Perhaps, Chen acknowledged. But tell me, Admiral, how will your Senate react when they learn that a primitive species managed to capture 30 of your most advanced warships in less than an hour? What will your people think when they discover how easily their vaunted military was outmaneuvered? As if to emphasize her point, the deck beneath Krovash's feet shuddered violently. The bridge lights flickered. Admiral, his security chief's voice came through the intercom. We have boarders on decks 17 through 23. They've bypassed our internal defenses somehow. How many? Krovash demanded. Unknown. Sensors are being jammed, but they're moving toward the main reactor and the command deck. This couldn't be happening. The Indomitable was the pride of the Alliance fleet, with defensive systems designed to repel armies. Yet somehow, these humans were cutting through those defenses like they didn't exist. Admiral Krovash, Chen's voice regained his attention. I'm offering you a choice. Order your fleet to withdraw beyond the orbit of Mars, and we'll allow you to depart this system with minimal casualties. Refuse, and we'll be forced to demonstrate exactly why Earth has remained isolated until now. Krovash hesitated, torn between his duty and the increasingly dire reality of his situation. And if I withdraw, what guarantee do I have that you won't use our own ships against us? You don't, Chen replied simply. Just as we had no guarantee that your diplomatic mission wasn't a prelude to invasion and resource extraction. Trust must begin somewhere, Admiral. Another explosion rocked the ship, closer this time. Admiral, they've reached Deck 5, his security chief reported, panic evident in his voice. They're using some kind of neural disruptors. Our troops are falling back. Krovash turned to his executive officer, seeing his own fear reflected in those alien eyes. Send the retreat signal, he ordered quietly. All ships to fall back beyond the Martian orbit. A wise decision, Chen said, and Krovash thought he detected a note of genuine approval in her voice. Your diplomatic team will be transferred to the Indomitable once you've reached the designated position. The Alliance vessels we've borrowed will remain with us as insurance against future misunderstandings. As the retreat order propagated through the fleet, Krovash felt a presence behind him. He turned to find Captain Vex standing on the bridge, flanked by 2 human soldiers in exoskeletal combat suits. How she had escaped the break, he couldn't fathom. Captain Vex, he acknowledged stiffly. I see you've chosen your side. I've chosen survival. Admiral, she replied. Something the Alliance Senate was too arrogant to consider. One of the humans handed Vex a small device, which she in turn offered to Krovash. Commander Chen asked me to give you this, a complete record of humanity's evolutionary and military history. She thought it might help the Alliance understand its miscalculation. Krovash accepted the device reluctantly. What makes humanity so different? We've encountered warrior species before. We've subdued them all. No, Vex corrected him. You've encountered species that fight for territory, for resources, for ideology. Humans fight for survival, and they've been doing it against themselves for thousands of years. She gestured to the tactical display, where the remains of his once mighty fleet were retreating in disarray. The Alliance creates warriors through training and technology. Humans are born from conflict. Their entire history is an arms race against themselves, constantly innovating, adapting, evolving new ways to kill each other. Krovash looked down at the device in his hand. And now they'll turn those skills against the galaxy. Not necessarily, came Chen's voice as she stepped onto the bridge, somehow having boarded the Indomitable herself. The human commander was shorter than Krovash had expected, but her presence filled the room nonetheless. Contrary to what your intelligence suggests, Admiral, we don't want war. We simply refuse to be victims. She walked to the viewport, gazing out at Earth, blue and deceptively peaceful. For centuries, we fought ourselves, nearly destroying our civilization multiple times. But each conflict taught us something. World War I introduced chemical warfare. World War II gave us nuclear weapons. The silent wars of the 21st century developed cyber warfare and bioweapons. Chen turned back to face them. Then, 50 years ago, we detected your scout ships, watching, analyzing, categorizing us as primitives. We made a collective decision to hide our true capabilities, to present ourselves as divided and technologically backward, while secretly preparing for the day you finally came openly. Project Sentinel, Vex said quietly. Chen nodded. A unified planetary defense initiative, combining the military technologies and strategies of every nation on Earth. We've had half a century to study your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses, all while you thought us oblivious to your presence. Krovash felt a chill run through his body. The Alliance will never accept this humiliation. They'll quarantine your system, blockade your planet. They can try, Chen interrupted. But I think they'll find that difficult, considering we now control 30 of your most advanced warships and have the technical specifications for every Alliance defense system. She smiled thinly. We're quick learners. Admiral, what do you want? Krovash asked finally, recognizing the futility of threats. The same thing we've always wanted, Chen replied. To be left alone. To develop at our own pace. To choose our own destiny. She paused. But we're also realists. The galaxy isn't going to forget we exist, especially after today. She nodded to one of her soldiers, who projected a holographic star map between them. These are our terms. Earth and its colonies will be recognized as an independent sovereign power. The Alliance will establish trade relations, but no military presence within 10 light-years of any human settlement. Any species currently under Alliance control that wishes independence will be granted a referendum. The Senate will never agree, Krovash began, but Chen raised a hand to silence him. They will when they understand the alternative. We've already transmitted the technical specifications of our phase-shifting mines and neural disruptors to every non-Alliance world with subspace communication capability. The technology monopoly that has kept the Alliance in power is over. She stepped closer, meeting his gaze. We don't want to be your enemies, Admiral, but we refuse to be your subjects. Vex moved to stand beside Chen, an unlikely alliance of human and alien. The Senate will listen, Admiral. They have no choice. The age of Alliance expansion through intimidation is over. Krovash looked between them, then back at the tactical display where his defeated fleet limped away from Earth. Everything he had believed about the natural order of the galaxy, about the Alliance's manifest destiny to rule, lay in ruins around him. Very well, he said finally. I will convey your terms. Chen extended her hand, a human gesture of agreement. After a moment's hesitation, Krovash took it, feeling the firm grip of a species that had spent its entire existence preparing for this moment. There's one more thing you should understand about humans, Admiral, Chen said as she released his hand. We don't just fight because we're good at it. We fight because throughout our history, it's been necessary for survival. But our greatest achievements have always come during peace. She nodded toward Earth again. We've spent 50 years preparing for war with the Alliance. Imagine what we could accomplish if we spent the next 50 collaborating instead. As the Indomitable resumed its retreat from Earth, Krovash found himself studying the small blue planet with new eyes. In all his cycles of service, he had never encountered a species that had so thoroughly deceived Alliance intelligence, presenting themselves as primitive while secretly building a military capacity that could challenge galactic powers. The data device Vex had given him contained the truth that the Alliance had missed. Humans weren't just another species to be cataloged and controlled. They were silent predators who had evolved not just to fight but to win, against nature, against themselves, and now against the stars. The galaxy would never be the same again. Neither would the Alliance. And as the Earth receded in the viewport, Krovash wondered if perhaps that was for the best.